Hi, I'm Randall, and welcome to part 2 of building Goose's motorcycle from Mad Max. Today, I'm going to install the correct handlebars and grips for Goose's bike, and we're going to talk about the rear sets. But before we do any of that, I want to take just a moment and say thank you to everyone out there who has been so supportive in helping me out throughout this process. I was overwhelmed by the positivity I've received from all the great folks from over the world who've been so willing to help me make my dream come true. I've received messages from a lot of you here domestically in America, some from Great Britain and other parts of Europe, and a lot of great help and support from y'all down under in Australia. So again, just want to say thank you to all of y'all. So let's get into this video. Let's talk about grips, handlebars, and rear sets.
The code for extraordinary progress ascended.
Now, the first thing I want to talk about today are the grips used. I zoomed in on a couple of stills from Mad Max and got a good idea of what the grips look like. So now I knew a little about what they looked like, but I had no idea what they were called. So I just simply searched vintage motorcycle grips on eBay, and I found some that looked very similar. They feel good. They're not hard like plastic, but they feel more like rubber. Now, if you're unfamiliar with older Japanese bikes, the bars came in 22 millimeter or 7/8 inch diameter, not 1 inch like the Harleys. So if you're going to get grips for your older bike, make sure you measure and verify they are 22 mil or 7/8 inch. The grips are soft and rubbery, and they feel good. So the next thing to change out would be the handlebars, and again, 22 mil or 7/8 inch bars. Now this was a little tougher for me because there weren't very many still shots of the movie that gave a clear sight of the bars. Some of the replica bikes I've seen used straight bars, and others used the drag bars with a slight bend on the end. But by looking at the stills that I do have of the movie, I concluded that they probably had a slight bend inward. And I think by looking closely, you can make out a bend inwards ever so slightly. I think if they were straight, they would be a little closer to the fairing. So I decided to get the bars with the bend in them. And if you have solid information about which type of bars were used in the movie, please let me know in the comments. And I guess it really doesn't matter because when I went to buy the bars, I only found chrome bars with the bend, so those are the ones I got. I'd also suggest that when buying parts for your bike, check your local mom and pop motorcycle shop. They may not have all the parts in stock that you want, and they may not be the cheapest, but they really are the best because you're supporting your community by buying local instead of online. Now, unfortunately, my local shop didn't have the grips, so I had to order those online, but they did have the bars. Now, an important tip when mounting new bars is to make sure everything fits accordingly. Sometimes the brake lines need to be replaced or the throttle cables too. Now, since my bike already had these low-rise bars, there was no need to replace either the throttle cables or the brake cable. Another pro tip is to check to make sure the handlebar controls on both sides don't make contact with the tank when the bars are turned all the way to either side. I have dented tanks on previous bikes by not checking the fitting before tightening down the bars. Clubman bars and clip-ons are especially notorious for denting tanks with the controls, so before you tighten the screws on the controls, make sure there's adequate clearance. If not, you may have to weld a stop onto the front of the neck, or I've seen some guys drill a hole and then put a screw in the neck in order to keep the bars from contacting the tank. So after I mounted the bars with the new grips, I set the height, I leveled them out, and then I went ahead and tightened down the mounting bolts. All right, now let's talk about the rear sets or foot pegs. I removed the rear passenger foot pegs, obviously, because there is no pylon or back seat for passengers on Goose's bike. But by looking at video clips and stills from the movie, you can see they are way further back. They are not in the stock position. Now, I know a lot of guys say just to take the triangle mounting plate off, flip it around, and then mount the foot peg, but it's still not far enough back. In the movie, they are really far back, like almost to where the back peg should be. Now, some of y'all have suggested Tarozzi rear sets, but I'm not sure if they are mounted far back enough either. There's not really some good pictures online that show exactly the mounting position. And after looking at some of the stills, it looks like the rear sets are mounted just underneath the side panel. Now, a couple of you from the Facebook groups have mentioned how uncomfortable they are when they're that far back. So at this point, I'm going to have to ask for your help. If you have Tarozzi or custom-made rear sets, please message me with a picture from the side of how they look on your bike. I'd really appreciate that, and I'll follow that up in another video of what decision I go with. Well, I think this is another good place to wrap up this video of the build, but hang tight because part 3 of the build will be coming out shortly. Again, I want to say thank you to all of you who have reached out to me and supported me with your messages and some really cool pictures that you've shared with me about everything, all things Mad Max. I really do appreciate that. So until next time, don't ride off the goose until you see the box going into the hole. Take care.